Now, your latest album, like a house on fire. What a fitting title for something that came out in the year 2020.
Yeah.
How about, you could have called it "The Whole World Is on Fire," "The Whole Universe Is on Fire." Tell us what it was like releasing an album in the worst year of anything to happen, basically. I'm like, the frustrations of wanting to tour with an album, and it gets pulled, the rug gets pulled out from under your feet. Kind of talk about that a little bit.
It was difficult, I mean, I think obviously everyone's in the same boat and we kind of just have to get on with it. But we were told by a lot of people, maybe we shouldn't be releasing during a pandemic. We should try and ride it out, which now with hindsight would have been ridiculous. You can't ride this out. It's taken so long. But we just truly, I remember we were just telling our team from, some of the team, everyone was supportive, but some of the team had concerns and some were like, no, let's just do it. And I think where we were coming from was, this is difficult for everyone. And personally, for me, in my hardest times of life growing up, music was the one thing that was constant in my life that I always turned to, that always made me feel better. And it was something that helped me sort of express my emotions and deal with trials and tribulations that life throws at you. And so our argument was always, we should release this now because people need it now more than ever. And on the one side, there's people saying, well, you're not going to sell as many copies because people don't have as much money. You're not going to sell as many copies because you can't tour. You're not going to sell as many copies because you're not going to make new fans because you can't tour and because blah, blah, blah. And there was so many becauses and not going to make money and you're not going to perform and the record's not going to do as well as it could. But just, it didn't matter. We wanted to put songs out that hopefully could be there for someone when they need them, and I think, to be completely honest, the fact that we haven't been on tour and the fact that we haven't been able to do all the things that we wanted to do with the record, it hasn't really slowed it down. I think it's still doing incredibly well. It's still spawned some of our biggest radio singles we've ever done. It's still streaming some of the best streaming numbers we've ever streamed. I think it's been a really interesting time to release music, but I love the fact that so many artists are releasing music during such an unknown time, because I do truly think it's important and people need it and people want it. So it's been strange. I will say that the touring thing, or lack thereof, has been difficult because touring sucks. Like, I hate touring. I hate being away from my wife and my kids. It's horrible. But that hour a day where you're on stage in front of your fans, in front of these people, and you're all in a room doing that thing I said earlier about, you're just there all in one place, living that moment. That's the greatest feeling. It's that I've missed more than anything. It's been a tremendous gap and hole in my life, not just having that connection with our fans from the stage to them, not hearing people sing the songs that you've spent so long crafting and creating. That's been really, really tough. But I kind of think it was necessary. I think people almost took it for granted. If you wanted to, you could go to a show every night of the week. And so I noticed that a lot of times when you would go to a country where you tour less, the crowd was way more amped, way more hyped, way more appreciative of you being there. And sometimes you could be someone's sixth show of the week, especially when you're touring in North America, and you
Yeah.
can tell, people were tired, or people would be sat there filming instead of enjoying it and living the moment. And I think this absence is gonna make people realize, oh man, you don't know what you've got till it's gone, as cliche as that is. And I think when shows return, it's going to be spectacular. I think there's just going to be an electricity at these shows unlike anything I've ever experienced. That's my belief anyway.
It's almost like hitting the reset button on a rock show. Like, you're gonna throw it back to like the way things used to be.
Yeah, and I'm hoping people go back to the way things used to be, and it's fun. People go back and look at Woodstock, or go back and look at any of these shows where people aren't just sat there with their phones up, but they're chanting and they're singing and they're bouncing up and down, and there's a cloud over the crowd because they're so sweaty. They've formed some kind of human sweat cloud above them. I'm excited for that to happen.
You know, it's funny. We were talking about the Scorpions earlier, and I remember the first concert video I ever saw was Scorpions Worldwide Live. I think they filmed it in like 82 or 3 or something like that. First concert film I've ever seen. And I just remember seeing like it might have been like Klaus Mind like signing some girl's boob with a magic marker. I'm like, this rock and roll thing is awesome. I gotta go to a show. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, today it's just like people with their cameras up the whole time. Let me ask about the song "Anti-Socialist" off the latest album, the a previous single you did, because the lyric that just sticks out of my head. I bet you thought the song was about you. Now, did you get that from? Because we've talked earlier how you had a little fascination with some of the '80s stuff, but was that from the Carly Simon song, or did you hear the Faster Pussycat version and kind of lift that from there?
I have not actually heard the Pussycat version. I'm going to have to listen to that
Yeah,
now.
yeah, Faster Pussycat did a whole "You're So Vain" version. It's pretty wild.
Oh wow, yeah, I didn't, but I love "You're So Vain." I think that song is an incredible song, and I loved how direct it was. And when Danny came back with the lyrics, the first thing I thought was, oh, you can't do that. But then the more I listened to the song,
Mhm.
because he hadn't realized somehow, and the more I listened to the song, I was like, man, but it's just so fitting, and it's just much like that song. It's very direct. It's just saying it straightforward. There's no beating around the bush. There's no hidden message. There's no clever storytelling. It just is what it is. And so I kind of loved that about the song. And so we ended up keeping it in there, and as a bit of an homage. And it's funny because I love chick flicks. I cry at everything. Since I've become a dad, everything makes me cry. And I would watch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days so many times, and that scene in the movie where she's singing it to Matthew McConaughey is just so good and so funny. So every time I hear Anti-Socialist, whether it's on the radio or it pops up on a jukebox or wherever, I don't even hear Asking Alexandria. I see that scene from How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, and it cracks me up every time I hear it.
Did you have to do you have to kick back a royalty even though it was a couple of words, or how does that work legally?
I don't think so, because the words are the same, but the
Yeah,
melody's not the same, the structure's not the same. I don't think
yeah,
the key's the same. It would have been a different thing if we'd have taken the song and the structure and the melody and the chord progression and all of that. But how many songs have I Want to Rock in it? You know what I mean?
yeah.
The words are the same, and for me, it's a nice sort of tribute, and there's a crossover there. But Danny wrote the lyrics without that song even in his mind. So it happens, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You listen to the 12-bar blues, and songs sound the same all the time. And I think people get really caught up in that sort of stuff. And I was watching YouTube, and I think it was One Direction had a big single out, and Tom Petty was being interviewed, and the interviewer said, do you care that they ripped your song? And he said, well, first of all, I don't think they ripped my song. But he said, and secondly, no, I don't care. It was a great song the way I did it, and it's a great song the way they've done it. So now the world has two great songs. So there's definitely a fine line. I'm not an advocate for just taking people's work. I don't think that's right. But there's so many songs out there and so many artists that things tend to get crisscrossed all the time.
Eventually, combinations of words are going to repeat. Eventually.
Exactly, and chord progressions, and
Yeah.
think about the structure of what a song has become now. The normalcy of a song. It's like intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. Even the structure of songs is so similar now, and there's only so many chord progressions that work well together. It's inevitable. It's bound to happen.
When you toured with some of those, bands that were, bigger in the '80s, like Twisted Sister, excuse me, and Guns N' Roses, and hanging out with Sebastian Bach, because the cover you guys did. Did you pick? Was there anything you picked up from them, like just being around them? And like, was there any advice they gave? Is there something they did, like just maybe the way they went about their day? Was there anything you picked up from these guys?
Um, it's just the thing I've learned about not just even like icons from the 80s and stuff, but all bands, especially bands that I grew up idolizing, whether it was, you know, Skid Row or Twisted Sister, or if it's Slipknot or Avenged, or all the bands I've met over the years, what I've really learned is just an overall sort of observation is that everyone is kind of, everyone's their own person, you know. So sometimes these people are as big and loud and explosive off stage as they are on stage. Like Sebastian Bach, he's very loud, he's very animated, he's very energetic, you know, and it's great. And then sometimes these people are just completely subdued, and then they're kind of quiet and kind of, you know, reclusive and stuff. And what I've learned over the years is just that people are people, and the stuff that you see on stage isn't necessarily who that person is, you know. And I learned that a long time ago, when we used to we got sort of thrown into this pool of being a rock and roll band because of all the 80s influence and stuff. And so people expected us to party, and kind of were like, you have to party, you're Alexandria, party, 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 party. We were on the front cover of magazines saying that world's hardest partying band and stuff. And so people just used to feed us drugs and alcohol and keep us all fucked up for as long as possible. And it got to the point where I was like, this isn't me, this isn't who I am, this is never who I was, and I don't enjoy it anymore, you know. And it got to the point where, like, I'll go on tour now and I'm in bed. I get off stage and I go and have a shower, and I have a great night on stage, and I go to bed, you know, I'm tired. And people come on the bus, they're like, oh, are you guys not partying? I'm like, no, we're tired. We don't want to party. We don't do that stuff, you know, anymore. And it's refreshing to be able to sit back and learn. You don't have to just be what people kind of fantasize you to be or want you to be because you're in a rock band, you know. And I think I learned that from a lot of these people, you know. And it's something that I've taken with me just from meeting everyone, you know. Like, I can hang out with the Avenged guys backstage, and instead of being quote unquote rock stars, they're there with their families and they're having a nice time, and maybe they're celebrating a kid's birthday backstage and they're blowing out candles, and it's like, oh, happy birthday, sing happy birthday, having a nice time, everyone's giving hugs, and it's like, okay, it's 2 minutes to showtime. They're like, okay, you know. And you turn it on and you go on stage, and you do the best impression of a rock star as you possibly can while you're on stage, and you do the best job you possibly can, and then you can come off stage and, you know, turn it back off again and be back in dad mode, you know. And I think it's when we were younger, it was hard to differentiate between the two, but you know, it's something that you learn over the years. And coming back to people like all these idols from the 80s and stuff, they've sort of showed us that when we would go back into like Twisted Sister's green room and they were just chilling, it's like, oh, this is okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they kind of like made all the mistakes for the bands now, you know, because you can watch all the behind the musics and things like that used to be on, and see like, you know, every band had their up and then the crash down, and
Yeah,
this way it's like, okay, well, what did they do wrong? Oh, this, okay, well, let's cut that out, and then we'll be fine. Yep.
Exactly.
So during the pandemic time here, what is something that you've picked up, maybe a hobby, another activity that you would not have done otherwise?
You know, it's funny. Music was always my hobby, and when I got signed, I was so young. I think I was like 15 when I first got signed. It very quickly turned into a job and a career, and that's not to say I didn't and I don't enjoy it, because I do. You know, I love it and I feel very grateful. But there's a definite difference between just doing something solely for fun in your free time, and then doing that thing that you loved for a living, and having to, you know, make sure that you do it to such a degree that you can afford to pay for your children to go to school. And, you know, there's things that you have to think about now. And so for the longest time, I didn't have a hobby because music was my hobby. And so you know, in this time off to begin with, I kind of just sat around and I was like, man, this is nice. I can just stay at home with my wife and kids and be a dad. And, you know, becoming a dad's the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And so I was more than happy to just stay home and be dad. And then my kids started going to school. And then I realized, oh, I have nothing to do. I don't have any hobbies anymore, you know? And so actually, during COVID, I started cooking, and I was like, for the first time in my life, I was like, I'm going to start cooking, and it just came very naturally to me, and I cook every night now. I've become the main cook in the house, and I've really sort of enjoyed learning that process and how to do that and eating healthier. It's been a lot of fun, and I know a lot of people love cooking, a lot of people don't. But for me, it's kind of like a stress reliever cooking. Like I'll cook a meal, like a 2-hour meal, and from start to finish, I'll make everything. And by the end of it, I'm covered in everything. Ingredients are everywhere, and the kitchen's a mess. But I don't feel stressed. I feel accomplished, and I feel happy. And then serving it to my family is just like one of the best times of them. I go, oh, what do they think of it? And the kids never like it. So could do better next time.
Does your wife think, wow, I really hit the lottery with this guy, musician, and now he's like cooking me dinner every night?
She says that out loud. I still wonder if she thinks it inside her head. I could be terrible. She'd be like, this is wonderful. And I'm like, it's a bit salty. And she's like, it's very salty.
Well, the new album, of course, has been out for a while now. We got the singles playing here on WMGM. What's the future when COVID's over? I know you guys will go back on the road, but you mentioned earlier, kind of briefly, you said you were doing some writing now. Any plans to do some recording while you're just, maybe Zoom recording or anything like that?
I mean, we kind of, I never stop writing. I love writing music. It's my favorite thing to do. So I'll wake up with song ideas, and I'll go to bed with song ideas. And so I've been spending all day recording, and it's just made us realize, like, well, while there's still all this time off and there's still all these uncertainties, we should use this time to write and create new Asking Alexandria music, so that when the world does open back up and we are given the green light to go back on tour, and to sort of get back to some kind of normalcy, we have new music to share with people. And this time hasn't just been sat around not doing anything. We've created something special, and we've had so long off too. I feel like there's a little bit of pressure on my shoulders. I'm like, this has to be the best stuff I've ever written, because I've had so long to do it. So yeah, it's been fun. I've been writing a lot. I'm really excited with the way things are turning out. And we have no plans as to when it's going to get released. We don't even know when touring's going to come back. So we're kind of just playing everything by ear at the moment. And
then when it does come back, you'll have 2 albums worth of material to
play. Yeah. And I think,
hang out.
And I think that's so cool, because how often does that happen? You get to go to a show and you're kept so busy touring that I feel like the sets start to feel recycled. And it's like, oh, we've been through this town 3 times and played a very similar set each time, maybe with the addition of a new song. But now it's going to be like, cool, we've got loads of new music to add to these live shows, and potentially some more new music that we haven't even had the chance to release yet. So it's an exciting thought for when touring comes back.
It should be cool, because like normally when a new album comes out, it's like, all right, we'll do 1 or 2 off the new album. But now it's like, well, the album's been out for a while. People have heard 3, 4 songs on the radio at least. Yeah. So you can really almost, a new album, you're almost playing like a catalog type thing with an album.
Which I think is awesome, and I love that. People always want to release an album around a tour. And I'm like, no, I want to release the album and wait and then go on tour, because there's nothing worse than going on stage and playing a song that no one knows.
Yeah.
The crowd's amped, everyone's bouncing up and down for all your songs. Then you go, this is a new one. And everyone just stands there. They can't sing along. They can't. Yeah. They don't know what's going on. It's like, shit, does the song suck? I mean, look at this. Like, no, dude, they don't know the song. It's like, yeah, but nothing.
You might as well just say, all right, it's time for you to go to the bathroom and get a beer, because we're going to play something you haven't heard before.
Yeah. You don't know this song, but we do, so we're going to play it anyway.
Well, Ben, I want to thank you so much for your time, and, hope to see you out soon. Enjoy living in Charleston and all the history you got there. Have you done any ghost tours while you're there?
No, we haven't. We've not done any ghost tours yet, because it's been weird during COVID. Like we'll still go out and enjoy ourselves as a family, but when we go out and eat, we'll try and eat outside at a table, just because we're 3 young kids. I know so many people that have got COVID and they've been like, it's nothing. And then you know people that have got COVID and it's been really detrimental to them. And so I'm like, I don't want to take the gamble. So we've tried to kind of steer away from doing sort of group stuff like that. So we're just, which is kind of exciting because we've got to explore Charleston in our own time, in our own way, since moving here, and just go around and find places for ourselves. And now when things start to open back up gradually, we'll get to go out and do all the ghost tours and actually learn. So it's kind of like we'll get to live two different versions of Charleston life.
Nice. All right, Ben. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you on the road soon and get you in Atlantic City soon, I hope.
Yes, I hope so, mate. Thank you so much.
All right, man. Take care.
Cheers, mate.